The security guard's hand trembled as he lifted his phone to make the call. What he had just witnessed in Prince George's classroom wasn't supposed to happen. Not here. Not to them. His throat tightened as the line connected, and he forced the words out through the knot of fear building in his chest. It was a Tuesday morning in October. The kind of morning where everything looked normal. Children walked through the gates of the private school in their crisp uniforms. Parents kissed foreheads and waved goodbye, and teachers smiled at the entrance. Officer David Matthews had been assigned to the Royal Detail for 3 years. He knew the routine. He knew the protocols, but nothing had prepared him for this. Prince George, 10 years old now, had seemed fine that morning. Kate had dropped him off herself, something she did whenever her schedule allowed. David remembered the way she adjusted George's collar, the way she laughed at something he said, the way she watched him walk toward the building before driving away. Everything was normal. Everything was safe. Until it wasn't. David's shift required him to patrol the corridors every 20 minutes. At 10:15, he walked past the third-floor classrooms. George's history class was in session. Through the small window in the door, David could see the teacher at the board, students bent over their notebooks. He moved on, but something pulled him back. A sound, faint, wrong. He stopped and turned, his instincts sharpening. For a moment, there was silence. Then he heard it again. A thud, then voices rising. Not the normal classroom noise. Something sharper, panicked. David moved quickly to the door. Through the window, he saw the teacher kneeling on the floor. Students were standing, some backing away, some frozen. And in the center of it all was Prince George, collapsed against his desk, his face pale, his body limp. If you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. This is a story you won't forget. David's training took over. He burst through the door, radio already in his hand. The teacher looked up at him, eyes wide with terror. He just fell, she stammered. I don't know what happened. He was fine, and then George's eyes were half open, unfocused. His breathing was shallow, irregular. David dropped to his knees beside him, checking his pulse. It was there, but weak. Too weak. One of George's classmates, a girl with braids, was crying. Another boy stood frozen by the window, his hands covering his mouth. Everyone stay calm, David said, his voice firm despite the ice flooding his veins. He pressed the button on his radio. Code red. Medical emergency. 3rd floor, room 12. It's the principal. The code words felt heavy leaving his mouth. Principal. The word they used for George. The word that meant everything had just changed. Within seconds, footsteps thundered down the hallway. The school nurse arrived first, her medical bag already open. Then 2 more security officers. Then the headmaster, his face drained of color. They formed a tight circle around George, blocking him from view. But David could still see his small hand lying motionless on the floor. The nurse checked his vitals, her fingers moving quickly, professionally, but David saw the flicker in her eyes, the hesitation, the fear she was trying to hide. We need an ambulance, she said quietly. Now, David was already on the phone. But there was another call he had to make. One he dreaded more than anything. His finger hovered over Kate's number in his secured contact list. He knew what this call would do to her. He knew the sound she would make when he told her. He knew the world was about to shatter for a mother who had done everything right, who had protected her children fiercely, who had believed this morning was just another normal morning. He pressed the button. The line rang once, twice, then her voice bright and unsuspecting. Hello? David closed his eyes. Your Royal Highness, he said, you need to come to the school right now. Asterisk, the silence on the other end of the line lasted only a heartbeat, but David felt it stretch into eternity. When Kate spoke again, her voice had changed completely. The lightness was gone. What happened? Is George hurt? David measured his words carefully. He collapsed during class. The medical team is with him now. The ambulance is on the way. He heard her sharp intake of breath. Then movement fast. I'm 10 minutes away. Don't move him. Tell them not to move him unless her voice cracked. I'm coming. The line went dead. David looked down at George, who was now being fitted with an oxygen mask by the paramedics who had just arrived. His eyes were still closed. The rise and fall of his chest was barely visible. Around them, students were being ushered out of the classroom by teachers who wore forced smiles and spoke in soothing tones. Even though their hands shook, David overheard one of the paramedics speaking quietly to the nurse. Blood pressure's dropping. We need to move now. They lifted George onto a stretcher with careful, practiced movements. His school uniform looked too big on him suddenly, his body small and fragile against the white sheets. The hallway had been cleared. Security had locked down the building. No phones, no photos. No word could get out before the family was ready. David walked alongside the stretcher as they moved toward the service exit where the ambulance waited, its lights already flashing. That's when he saw the classroom again through the open door. And that's when he noticed it. Something the chaos had obscured before. On George's desk, partially hidden under his notebook, was a small plastic container. Clear, empty. David's stomach dropped. He stopped. Wait, he called to the paramedics. They paused, glancing back. David stepped into the classroom and carefully picked up the container with a tissue. It was a snack container, the kind students brought from home. But it wasn't George's. His lunchbox was still closed on the hook by the door, untouched. David's mind raced. He turned to the teacher, who stood trembling near the window. Did George eat anything during class? She blinked, thinking, I don't know, maybe the students sometimes share snacks. I don't always notice if who sits next to him. David's voice was sharp now. Emma Peterson. And Thomas Whitley behind him? She pointed to the empty desks. David looked at Thomas's desk, clean, then Emma's. There was another container there, identical to the one on George's desk. His blood went cold. He bagged both containers carefully, then radioed the security team. I need Emma Peterson and Thomas Whitley brought to the head office immediately. And I need their parents contacted. No one leaves this building. The teacher's eyes widened. You don't think I don't think anything yet? David interrupted. But his jaw was tight. Because he did think something. He thought something terrible. Outside, tires squealed against pavement. David knew that sound. Kate had arrived. He moved quickly back into the hallway just as she came running through the service entrance. Her security detail struggling to keep pace. She wasn't wearing the composed mask she usually wore in public. Her hair was windswept, her eyes wild, her face pale. She was just a mother now, terrified, desperate. Where is he? She gasped. The paramedics were loading the stretcher into the ambulance. Kate ran to it, her hand reaching for George's. George, sweetheart, Mummy's here. Her voice broke on the last word. She climbed into the ambulance without hesitation, without asking permission. Her hand gripping his small fingers. George's eyes fluttered. For a moment, just a moment, they opened. He looked at her, confused, scared. Ma'am? His voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, darling. I'm right here. Tears streamed down Kate's face, but she smiled at him. You're going to be fine. You're going to be absolutely fine. But David saw the paramedic's expression, the way he checked the monitors, the way he exchanged a glance with his partner. They didn't believe that. Not yet. The ambulance doors started to close. David stepped forward. Your Royal Highness, I need to tell you something. Kate looked at him, her face a mask of anguish and fury and fear, all mixed together. What? David held up the bagged container. I found this on George's desk. It's not his. I think he paused. I think he may have been given something. The color drained from Kate's face. Her hand tightened around George's. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to find out what was in this container. And we need to find out fast. The ambulance driver started the engine. Kate's eyes never left George's face, but she nodded once, sharply. Find out who gave it to him, she said, her voice low and shaking. Find out everything. Then the doors slammed shut, and the ambulance tore away from the school, sirens wailing into the autumn air. David stood in the empty lot, the container in his hand, and felt the weight of what had just happened settle over him like a stone. This wasn't an accident. He knew it in his bones. Someone had done this. To a child, to a prince, and he was going to find out who. The hospital room was too quiet. Kate sat beside George's bed, her hand wrapped around his, her eyes fixed on the monitors that beeped steadily beside him. He was stable now. The doctors had worked quickly, pumping his stomach, running tests, flooding his small body with fluids and medication. But they still didn't know what had caused the collapse. They were waiting on toxicology results. William had arrived 20 minutes after the ambulance, his face drawn and pale. He stood on the other side of the bed now, one hand on George's shoulder, the other rubbing his face in exhaustion and fear. Neither of them had spoken much. What was there to say? Their son was lying in a hospital bed unconscious, and someone had put him there. A knock on the door broke the silence. David Matthews stepped inside, his expression grim. Behind him was another man in a dark suit, Detective Inspector Alan Cross from the Metropolitan Police. Kate looked up, her eyes red but sharp. "Tell me," she said. David glanced at William, then back at Kate. "We interviewed the two students who sit near George, Emma Peterson and Thomas Whitley. Emma's container was full. She hadn't shared anything with anyone. But Thomas," he paused. "Thomas said a girl gave him the container this morning before class, told him to give it to George, said it was a treat from her mother, something special." Kate's grip on George's hand tightened. "What girl?" He didn't know her name. Said she was older, maybe 12 or 13, blonde hair. He'd never seen her before. She approached him in the hallway, knew his name, knew he sat near George. David's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his anger. "We've reviewed all the security footage. She entered through the parent drop-off area at 8:40 a.m., mixed in with a group of families. No one stopped her because she was wearing the school uniform. But she's not a student there." William's jaw clenched. "So someone sent her. Someone planned this." Detective Cross stepped forward. "We're treating this as attempted poisoning. The container is being analyzed now, along with the contents we recovered from Prince George's stomach. We should have preliminary results within the hour." Kate's voice was barely above a whisper. "Who would do this? Who would hurt a child?" No one answered, because the answer was too big, too dark. There were people who hated the monarchy. People who saw the royal family as symbols to be attacked. People who didn't see George as a 10-year-old boy who liked football and video games and making his siblings laugh. "We're reviewing every threat made against the family in the past 2 years," Cross continued, "tracking the girl through CCTV. We'll find her." William's voice was cold. "Should have found her before she got into my son's school." The words hung in the air like an accusation. David flinched. He had been there. He had been doing his job. And it hadn't been enough. Kate looked at David, and for a moment her expression softened. "This isn't your fault," she said quietly. "You saved him. If you hadn't checked on that classroom when you did," her voice broke. She couldn't finish the sentence. George stirred. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused, and confused. "Mum?" His voice was hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed an hour ago. Kate leaned forward, her face inches from his. "I'm here, darling, right here. I don't feel good." His face scrunched up, and tears welled in his eyes. "What happened?" William moved closer, his large hand gentle on George's head. "You got sick at school, mate, but you're safe now. The doctors are taking good care of you. Did I do something wrong?" George's lower lip trembled. "Shh." Everyone was scared. I saw their faces. Kate's heart shattered. "No, sweetheart. No, you didn't do anything wrong." She kissed his forehead, her tears falling onto his skin. "Someone gave you something that made you sick. But it wasn't your fault. None of this was your fault." George's eyes drifted to the detective and David standing near the door. "Am I in trouble?" "Not even a little bit," William said, forcing a smile. "You're the bravest boy I know." A doctor entered, holding a tablet. Her expression was serious. She glanced at George, then at William and Kate. "Can I speak with you outside?" Kate didn't want to leave George's side, but William squeezed her shoulder. "I'll stay with him," he murmured. "Go." Kate followed the doctor, David, and Detective Cross into the hallway. The door closed behind them, muffling the sound of the monitors. The doctor pulled up results on her tablet. The toxicology came back. It was oleander. Someone ground up oleander seeds and mixed them into what appears to have been a chocolate treat. Oleander is extremely toxic. Even a small amount can cause cardiac arrest in children. Kate's hand flew to her mouth. The hallway tilted. David caught her arm, steadying her. "He's going to recover," the doctor said quickly. "We caught it in time. His heart is stable, and we're monitoring him closely." But if Officer Matthews hadn't found him when he did, if the response had been even 10 minutes slower, she didn't need to finish. Kate understood. Her son had been minutes from death. Someone had tried to kill him with poisoned chocolate. A child. Her child, Oleander. Detective Cross repeated, his pen moving across his notepad. "That's not something you just find. Someone had to know what they were doing, had to plan this carefully." Kate turned to him, her grief hardening into something else, something fierce. "Then find them. I don't care what it takes. Find whoever did this." Cross nodded. "You will, Your Royal Highness, I promise you." But Kate barely heard him. She was thinking of George's face when he'd asked if he was in trouble. She was thinking of how close they'd come to losing him. She was thinking of Charlotte and Louis at home, unaware of how much danger their brother had been in. How much danger they might all still be in. She pushed open the door to George's room. William looked up, his eyes asking the question. Kate nodded once. "He's going to be okay." William's shoulders sagged with relief. George had fallen back asleep, his face peaceful now, innocent. Kate sat back down beside him, taking his hand again. And in the quiet of that hospital room, with her husband standing guard and her son breathing steadily beside her, Kate Middleton made a silent vow. Whoever had done this would answer for it, not to the Princess of Wales, to a mother whose child had been hurt. 3 days passed. George was released from the hospital with strict instructions and a security detail that had tripled in size. The story had broken in the press. Not the full truth, not yet, but enough. "Prince George hospitalized after incident at school," the headlines read. Reporters camped outside the palace gates. Speculation ran wild on social media. The palace released a brief statement. George was recovering well. The matter was under investigation. But inside Kensington Palace, the mood was anything but calm. Kate hadn't slept properly since the incident. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw George collapsing. She saw his pale face. She heard the flatline sound she'd imagined but never actually heard. William tried to comfort her, but she could see the same haunted look in his eyes. They were both holding on to control by a thread. Detective Cross had become a daily presence. He sat across from Kate and William in the private study now, his notebook open, his expression grave. "We've identified the girl," he said. Kate leaned forward. "Who is she?" "Her name is Sophie Brennan, 13 years old. She lives in North London with her mother, Rachel Brennan. No officia, has no criminal record, no history of violence. By all accounts, she's a normal student at a normal school." "Then why would she?" William started. "She didn't know what she was doing," Cross interrupted. "When we questioned her, she broke down immediately. Said a woman approached her outside her school 2 weeks ago, gave her £200 in cash, and told her it was for a YouTube prank. Said she'd be famous. The woman showed her photos of Prince George, told her which school he attended, described the boy she needed to give the container to. Asterisk, Kate felt sick. A 13-year-old girl. They used a child." Cross nodded. "Sophie. Described the woman as mid-30s, dark hair, professional looking. She wore sunglasses and a scarf. We've reviewed footage from near Sophie's school, but whoever this woman is, she knows how to avoid cameras. She's careful, experienced." "What about the mother?" William asked. "Rachel Brennan. Does she have any connection to? None that we can find?" "She's a teacher. Single parent. No political affiliations, no social media posts about the royal family, nothing. She had no idea what her daughter had done until we showed up at her door. She's devastated." Kate stood and walked to the window. Below, in the garden, George was playing with Charlotte and Louis under the watchful eyes of 4 security officers. He looked happy, normal, but she knew he was asking questions. Why couldn't he go back to school? Why were there so many guards? Now why did Mummy cry so much? Asterisk, so someone is still out there, Kate said, her voice hollow. Someone who planned this. Someone who tried to kill my son. We're following every lead, Cross assured her. The woman made one mistake. She had to acquire the oleander somehow. We're checking garden centers, botanical suppliers, online purchases. Someone bought or harvested those seeds. We'll find the trail. But Kate heard the uncertainty beneath his confidence. This woman was a ghost. She'd planned everything perfectly, used an innocent girl as her weapon, and disappeared. William stood beside Kate, his hand finding hers. What about protection? What are we supposed to do now? Keep them locked inside forever? Cross hesitated. We're recommending enhanced security protocols. More officers. Screening for all visitors. Random schedule changes to prevent patterns. And he paused. We think George should be homeschooled for the remainder of the term. Just until we have more answers. Kate's eyes closed. George loved school. He loved his friends, his football team, the normalcy of it. Taking that away from him felt like letting the attacker win. But keeping him safe mattered more. Everything mattered less than keeping him safe. We'll do whatever it takes, William said firmly. That evening, after the detective had left and the children were in bed, Kate found herself in George's room. He was asleep, his arm wrapped around the stuffed lion he'd had since he was 3. She sat on the edge of his bed and watched him breathe. In, out, steady, alive. She thought about the woman. The one who'd handed poison to a child and sent her into a school. What kind of person did that? What kind of hatred drove someone to hurt an innocent boy? Kate's phone buzzed. A message from David Matthews. May I call you? She stepped into the hallway and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. Your Royal Highness, I wanted you to hear this from me first. We found something. Kate's heart jumped. What? The tech team recovered data from the school's recycled security footage. There was a car parked across the street the morning of the incident. It arrived at 8:30 and left at 9. We got a partial plate. It's registered to a woman named Claire Ashford. Who is she? That's the thing. She doesn't exist. The name is fake. The address on file is abandoned. But the car itself was caught on traffic cameras heading north after leaving the school. We tracked it to a location in Hertfordshire. An old farmhouse, isolated. Police raided it 4 hours ago. Kate's breath caught. And she was gone. But she left in a hurry. We found equipment. A laptop with research on oleander toxicity, printed maps of George's school, photos of the family, and David's voice dropped. A list. Other potential targets? Charlotte, Louis, other royal children? The world spun. Kate gripped the wall to steady herself. We're bringing in additional security for all of them, David continued quickly. But Your Royal Highness, this woman is organized. She's planned this for months, maybe longer. She's not going to stop. Kate's voice came out cold, harder than she'd ever heard herself sound. Then you need to find her before she tries again. We will. I swear to you, we will. After the call ended, Kate stood in the dark hallway for a long time. She thought about the woman out there somewhere, planning, watching, waiting. She thought about her children sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger that circled them. She thought about the fear that had become a constant companion. The way she checked locks twice now, the way she held her children tighter, longer. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. A resolve. A strength she hadn't known she possessed. This woman wanted to terrorize them. Wanted them to live in fear. Wanted to prove that even royalty could be broken. Kate walked back into George's room. She kissed his forehead gently, careful not to wake him. I won't let her, Kate whispered. I won't let anyone hurt you again. It was a promise. One she intended to keep, no matter what it cost. The days that followed were a careful dance between normalcy and paranoia. Kate insisted on maintaining routines for the children. Breakfast together. Lessons in the morning. Playtime in the afternoon. But now, every moment was shadowed by armed guards, by locked doors. By the constant awareness that someone was out there, George asked questions. Why can't I see my friends? Why can't I go back to school? Kate gave him gentle answers, half-truths wrapped in reassurance. Just for a little while, darling. Just until everything settles down. But George was smart. He saw the fear in his mother's eyes. He heard the whispered conversations between his parents late at night. One afternoon, Kate found him sitting alone in his room, staring out the window. She sat beside him on the bed. "Are you angry with me?" George asked quietly. Kate's heart broke. "What? No, sweetheart. Why would I be angry with you?" "Because I ate the chocolate. Thomas gave it to me, and I should have asked first. Dad always says to check with you before I eat things from other people." Kate pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him. "George, listen to me. None of this was your fault. You were being kind. You were being trusting. Those are beautiful things. Don't ever think you did something wrong." But George's eyes filled with tears. "I saw your face. In the hospital, you were so scared." "I made you scared, oh my darling boy." Kate held him tighter, her own tears falling now. "I was scared because I love you so much, because the thought of losing you was unbearable. But that wasn't because of anything you did. You didn't make this happen. Someone else did. Someone who made a terrible, evil choice." George pulled back, looking at her with those serious eyes that sometimes seemed too old for his face. "Will they try again?" Kate wanted to lie. Wanted to promise him that everything was fine, that the danger was over, that he could go back to being a normal 10-year-old. But she'd never lied to her children about the important things. "We're doing everything we can to keep you safe," she said carefully. "There are good people working very hard to find the person who did this. And until they do, Daddy and I are going to make sure nothing bad happens to you or Charlotte or Louis. I promise you that." George nodded slowly. Then he asked the question that cut deepest. "Do people hate us?" Kate closed her eyes. How did you explain this to a child? How did you tell your son that yes, some people hated him simply for who he was born to be, that they saw him not as George, but as a symbol, as something to attack? "Some people don't understand us," she said finally. "Some people are angry at things they can't control, and they look for someone to blame. But George, for every one person like that, there are thousands who care about you, who want you to be safe and happy. Focus on them. Focus on the good people." That night, after the children were asleep, Kate and William met with Detective Cross again. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot from too many hours and too little sleep. "We have a breakthrough," he said without preamble. "The laptop we recovered from the farmhouse had encrypted files. It took our tech team 3 days, but they cracked it. We have her real name. We have her history." Kate leaned forward. "Tell us everything." Her name is Victoria Hartley, 36 years old. Former nurse, lost her job 5 years ago after a patient complaint. Divorced, no children. She's been active in anti-monarchy groups online for years, using different aliases. But about 8 months ago, something changed. Her posts became darker, more violent. She started talking about making a statement, making them pay. William's fists clenched. "Why, George? Why a child?" Cross met his eyes. "Because she knew it would hurt you the most." This wasn't about politics or ideology, not really. It was about causing maximum pain. In her mind, the royal family represents everything wrong with society. Privilege, power. She wanted to strike at the heart of it. Where is she now? Kate's voice was ice. "We don't know. She's gone underground completely. No credit card usage, no phone activity, no sightings. But we did find something else in her files. Communication with someone else? Another person who shares her views. We're tracking that lead now." Kate stood abruptly. "Another person? So there's more than one?" "It appears so. But Your Royal Highness, we're close. Every hour, we're getting closer." Her face is being circulated to every officer in the country. She can't hide forever, but Kate barely heard him. The idea that there were multiple people planning to hurt her children was too much. She felt William's hand on her shoulder, steadying her, but she pulled away. She needed air. She needed space. She walked out onto the terrace. The cold November wind bit at her skin, but she welcomed it. It made her feel real, made her feel something other than the numb terror that had settled into her bones. David Matthews appeared beside her. He'd taken to staying close, personally overseeing the family's security. He blamed himself, Kate knew. Even though she'd told him it wasn't his fault. I failed him, David said quietly, staring out at the dark gardens. You saved him, Kate corrected. If you hadn't been there, I should have stopped it before it started. I should have seen the threat. That's my job. Kate looked at him. This man who had carried her son to safety, who had made the hardest call of his career, who stood guard over her children now with the fierce dedication of someone who would die before he let harm come to them again. David, I need you to promise me something. He turned to her. Anything. When you find her, when you find Victoria Hartley, I want to see her. Before the trial, before anything else. I want to look her in the eye and ask her why. David hesitated. Your Royal Highness, I don't think that's I need to understand, Kate interrupted. Her voice cracked. I need to know what kind of person does this. What kind of hatred drives someone to poison a child? Maybe it won't help. Maybe it won't change anything. But I need to try. David studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. When we find her, I'll make it happen. 3 days later, at 4:30 in the morning, Kate's phone rang. She answered it before the first ring finished, her heart already racing. We have her, David's voice said. She tried to board a ferry to France. Border Patrol recognized her. She's in custody. Kate sat up, her hand shaking. Where? London. Metropolitan Police Headquarters. She's being processed now. Kate looked at William, who had woken at the sound of the phone. His face was grim. I'm coming, Kate said. I need to see her, Kate Williams started. But she was already out of bed, already getting dressed. I have to do this. I have to know why. The interrogation room was cold and sterile. Gray walls, a metal table, 2 chairs. Kate sat on one side, her hands folded in her lap, her face composed. But inside, her heart hammered against her ribs. Across from her, separated by that table and an ocean of incomprehension, sat Victoria Hartley. She looked ordinary. That was the thing that struck Kate most. Brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Tired eyes. A worn sweater? She could have been anyone. A teacher. A neighbor. A mother dropping her child at school, but she wasn't. She was the woman who had tried to kill George. Detective Cross stood in the corner, along with David Matthews. They'd tried to talk Kate out of this meeting. William had tried, but Kate had been firm. She needed this, needed to understand. Victoria stared at the table, her hands cuffed in front of her. She hadn't looked up since Kate entered the room. Look at me, Kate said quietly. Victoria's head lifted slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Why? Kate's voice was steady, but her hands trembled in her lap. Why would you hurt a child, my child? A 10-year-old boy who never did anything to you? Victoria's jaw tightened. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Because right now, all I see is someone who gave poison to a child. Who planned to murder an innocent boy. Tell me what I'm missing. He's not innocent, Victoria said flatly. None of you are. You represent everything wrong with this country. You live in palaces while people starve. You smile and wave while the world burns. You're parasites. Kate felt anger flare, but she forced it down. So you decided to kill him. That was your solution? Murdering a child who has no control over where he was born or what family he belongs to. It would have made a statement, Victoria said, and there was a fire in her eyes now. It would have shown people that you're not untouchable. That your privilege can't protect you from everything. That it would have broken his mother's heart, Kate interrupted, her voice cracking. It would have destroyed his siblings. It would have ended a life that hadn't even really begun. That's what it would have done. Not make a statement. Not change the world. Just create more pain. Victoria looked away. You wouldn't understand. You've never struggled. Never been overlooked or dismissed or ground down by a system that protects people like you and discards people like me. You're right, Kate said. I won't pretend to understand your pain or your struggles. But Victoria, I am a mother, and you tried to take my child from me. You tried to make me bury my son. That transcends politics or class or anything else. That's just cruelty." For the first time, something flickered across Victoria's face. Doubt, perhaps, or regret, but it vanished quickly. "I'm not sorry," Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. Kate leaned forward. "Do you have family? Parents? Siblings?" Victoria hesitated. "My mother. She's in a care home. Dementia. Do you visit her?" "When I can. When they let me." Victoria's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "When you sit with her, what do you feel?" That's not," Victoria stumbled over her words. "Love?" Kate pressed. "Do you feel love for her? Even though she might not remember you? Even though she can't give anything back?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears, though she fought them. "Yes, then you understand. You understand what it means to care about someone so deeply that the thought of losing them is unbearable. That's what you tried to take from me. And it's what you would have taken from your own mother if the police had." Kate stopped herself. "When your mother hears about this, when she has moments of clarity, she'll know what you did. She'll know you tried to murder a child. Is that the legacy you want to leave her?" Victoria's face crumpled. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over. I thought it would be quick. Painless. I thought you thought wrong," Kate said, her own tears falling now. "George suffered. He was terrified. He didn't understand what was happening to him. And he asked me," her voice broke. "He asked me if he'd done something wrong. If people hated him. I had to look my 10-year-old son in the eye and try to explain that, yes, some people hate him for no reason other than who he is." Victoria put her cuffed hands over her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't undo it," Kate said. "Sorry doesn't erase what you did. But maybe it's a start. Maybe it means there's still something human in you." Detective Cross cleared his throat. "Your Royal Highness, we should." Kate held up a hand. She wasn't finished. She looked at Victoria, this broken woman who had nearly destroyed her family. "I came here because I needed to see you. I needed to know if you were a monster or just a person who made a monstrous choice. And now I know. You're just a person. Someone who was hurt and angry and made the worst decision imaginable. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it helps me understand." Victoria looked up at her, mascara streaking her face. "How can you sit here and talk to me like this? How can you be so? Because hating you won't help George," Kate said simply. "And because I want my children to grow up knowing that even in the darkest moments, we choose grace over vengeance. That doesn't mean you won't face justice. You will. But it means I won't let what you did turn me into something I'm not." Kate stood. She looked at Victoria one last time. "George is going to be fine. He's strong and kind and surrounded by people who love him. Whatever you hoped to accomplish, you failed. And he will have a beautiful life, despite what you tried to do." She walked to the door, then paused. "I hope you find peace, Victoria. I hope someday you understand the gravity of what you've done and find a way to live with it. Not for your sake, for your mother's." David opened the door for her. As Kate stepped out into the hallway, she felt the weight of the past weeks crash over her. The fear, the anger, the sleepless nights, the image of George's pale face in that classroom. It all came flooding out. She leaned against the wall and wept. Great shaking sobs that she'd held back for too long. David stood nearby, giving her space, but staying close, protecting her even now. When the tears finally subsided, Kate straightened. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. "Take me home," she said. "Take me to my children." The drive back to Kensington Palace was quiet. Kate watched the city wake up around her. People heading to work, children walking to school. Life continuing, as it always did. Normal, safe, precious. When she arrived home, the house was just stirring. William met her at the door, his eyes searching her face. "Are you okay?" "I will be," she said. And she meant it. They walked upstairs together. In George's room, he was still asleep, his face peaceful in the early morning light. Kate sat on the edge of his bed and placed her hand gently on his head. He stirred, opening his eyes. "Ma'am, I'm here, darling." "I had a good dream," he said sleepily. "I was back at school, playing football with everyone. It was normal again." Kate's heart ached. "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon, things will be normal again. I promise." George smiled and closed his eyes, drifting back to sleep. Kate stayed there, watching him breathe. Feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her hand, she thought about Victoria Hartley sitting in that interrogation room, about the hatred that had driven her to such darkness, about all the broken people in the world carrying pain they didn't know how to heal, but mostly, she thought about her children, about George's kindness, Charlotte's joy, Louis's laughter, about the family they were building despite the dangers that surrounded them, about choosing love over fear, grace over bitterness, hope over despair. The sun rose higher, streaming through the window. A new day, a new beginning. George was safe. Her family was whole. And Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales, mother of 3, survivor of every parent's worst nightmare, knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as royalty, not as symbols as a family. Strong, resilient, and bound by a love that no amount of hatred could break. And that, she realized, was the most powerful thing of all.